Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Sharing Our Stories. I'm so excited. I love these series because I get to introduce you to some amazing people from around the world. We've been touching different countries and different people with different backgrounds, even with the United States. And we do this every month. We feature a different person's journey with their abilities, with their children, just overall. And the purpose, again, is just to start having these open conversations and to normalize things and to let you know that this is something, this high intuition and these abilities, mediumship abilities, this is everyone around the world, all different cultures, all different people. And so it's our children, it's adults and children. And so this is a great conversation to have each month to help highlight different people, different backgrounds, and just how we all have worked with it, what we do with the abilities that we have and how it's impacted us and how we can start helping to normalize the conversations to help our children and the adults going forward. So today I'm so happy we have Betty Kajumo here with us. And I want to welcome her. This is so exciting. She lives in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, but her background is she brings another perspective from another culture to us. So I want to say welcome to you, Betty. Thank you so much for agreeing to sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Ellen, for inviting me here. I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Great. And I want to make sure I said your name properly. Betty Kajumo.
Yes, Kajumo.
Kajumo. Okay. So Betty, Betty is another highly intuitive person. And we're going to get her story, let her talk about her story and her background, because she brings another beautiful perspective to us, and about raising children and just her whole journey with her abilities. So Betty, I'm gonna just toss it out to you to let you start sharing with our parent community, and for anybody who's going to be watching this video, to start hearing your story and bring another perspective to everything. So Betty, tell us, more about where you're from and just take us through your journey with your abilities. When did they start? Did they start in childhood? How they started, just how you handle, just take us through a progression of your story.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd love to do that. So I was born in Kenya. So I lived quite a number of years in Kenya. And but my father was from Malawi. So we moved from Kenya when I was in my teens and went back to Malawi. I am a medium, and my abilities, I first knew that I had these abilities when I was very young. When I was a little girl, I used to know things, and I used to see things, but I never shared with anyone because I thought everybody could see what I was seeing, until one day I saw 3 gentlemen come to visit my dad, and they left the car and walked to the front door, and my mother opened the door and they went inside, and I couldn't stop staring at one man. And my mother stepped out and said, play close to the house, don't go too far away. And I got really more curious. And I knew that when she says that, it means don't come into the house because grown-ups are having a conversation. Anyway, when they left, which was not very long after that, I found myself staring at that particular man again. And I said to my brothers, I said, that man is going to die. And my brothers looked at him and said, how do you know that? I said, I don't know, but I just know. And they got into the car and they drove off. Later that evening, when we were having dinner, my brother says to my father, he said, Betty thinks that the gentleman that came today, the one who was wearing a black suit, is going to die. And my father laughed and said, oh, that's not true. And so the conversation ended there. However, the following week, I heard my father deliver news to my mother about that gentleman that he had passed and he had taken his own life. And it was at that time that I knew that what I was seeing, others were not seeing, and what I knew, others did not know. Anyway, it was several years, like decades later, when I really began to know that I had some special abilities. I was working for Standard Bank, and during the course of my work, I would just know, I would look at people that I worked with, and I would just know. I would know stuff about them. I would know that they were not well. I would know something was going to happen. And every time I felt like I needed to tell them, there was something that told me, no, don't tell them anything. You can say this, but you cannot tell them. So I began to realize that I know things and I cannot share. I can only share when an inner voice tells me that, yes, share. And what I was sharing was mostly healing and not bad news. A few years into living in Zimbabwe, I had a dream, and it was a time in my life when I noticed that a lot of my dreams were coming true and that I was receiving messages through my dreams. And I got a message. I had a dream of my brother, and I saw in that dream how he was going to pass. I saw how I would receive the news. It was like I was going through the whole experience. And I was so scared. I woke up and I went to the bathroom. I drank some water. I tried to think about what I just saw in my dream, and I thought, no, it's just a dream. Went back to sleep. As soon as I fell asleep, the dream came back. And this happened about 3 times that night. I finally decided I wasn't going back to sleep, and I was going to call my brother and just to see if he was okay. And when I called him, he was not picking up the phone. I called him at work. He was not picking up the phone. And so I started getting worried, and I thought, maybe I should ask my parents. And I thought, no, don't call them, because if you do, then you're probably breaking news before they know. Wait until you can confirm it. And finally, about 3 days later, my brother did call me back. And he asked me, why are you calling me so much, leaving all messages all over the place? What is going on? And I didn't tell him. I started talking about something else. We had a wonderful conversation. We laughed, we joked. And in that conversation, he mentioned something about if he ever passed away, what would happen. And at that time, it did not come back to me that that's the purpose of this call. You need to tell him. I did not do that. When I hung up the phone after our conversation, I remembered that that was the purpose for the call, but I was not supposed to tell him about it. And it reminded me of my younger days that you don't tell everything. Sometimes it's just for you to know. Exactly a month to the day that I had that dream, my brother passed away, exactly like what happened in the dream, in a motor vehicle accident around 7:30 in the evening. My father called me to give me the news, just like in my dream. But what was interesting was on that day, that Sunday, at around 7:30, my television turned on and off, on and off. All the lights in the whole house were just flickering and flickering. And I didn't pay attention to that as something that is a supernatural phenomenon or anything like that. I just thought that it was just electricity. And 3 hours later, I got a call that my brother had passed. And I understood that that was him communicating with me, because that's the hour that he passed.
Wow. Betty,
So,
can I ask you a couple quick questions?
yes.
So that's amazing. And I'll have a quick share on that, but I want to go back to, so did you, from the first time that you knew that the gentleman was going to pass away and you didn't say anything, did you ever tell anybody you were having these experiences? Did your parents or anyone know? You mentioned it to your brother that the gentleman was going to pass away, but with all these different experiences that you explained, at that point, you knew that you knew something, and you knew that you knew things that others didn't, and you were experiencing others didn't. But did you share that with anybody? And did you have ever researched to find out more of what was going on with you?
No, I did not tell anybody. And the reason why I didn't do that was because we were a Catholic, family. That's the faith that we followed, and very devout. And the discussion of a thing like that would not be received well, especially when you are being told about the power of the devil, and how evil things happen. And I knew that if I told my mother that, she would probably, write it off to something that was evil. So I never told anyone. And I went to a Catholic school, so there was no one there that I was going to tell that. But I kept it to myself. And I knew that I know something, but I wasn't at that time able to know that this could be evil or this could be anything. To me, it was just knowledge. It was just knowledge. I didn't interpret it as something that is evil, only that I just know. I don't know why I know, but I just know.
Wow.
So,
I love you saying that, Betty, because I'm the same. I also grew up in the Catholic religion, and had the same kind of experience where I knew things. I would sometimes feel like an inner voice whispering to me or telling me things like what you were saying, but I knew I didn't share it with others, in growing up just in that belief system. And many people grow up in different belief systems that don't embrace this kind of a knowing or experiencing of life, or the subtle energies. And then people do suppress it, and they keep it hidden. And that's what happens with, at whatever age, kids especially, who stay connected to these gifts, and they just kind of keep them suppressed. So it's great. It's interesting to hear you say that, but I think that's a great point for people to realize that this is normal. People have this ability to different degrees, intuitive abilities and some of these mediumistic abilities. But a lot of times, and I know from me embracing my gifts, it was trying to get over my belief system to really understand it and embrace that it was okay
yes,
to have these experiences.
yes, yes, yes. And I think that I would say that when I really, really began to address what I was seeing and feeling and knowing was a conversation that I had with a coworker. It was very interesting because I returned to work, and there was a coworker that never ever spoke to me, never greeted me, totally ignored me. And I was so surprised. He came to my desk at lunchtime, and he sat down, and he stretched himself. He put his hands behind his head, and I thought, what's going on here? And he said, I heard that you lost your brother. And I said, yes. And he said, tell me what happened. So I explained to him that how he died. And I also felt, I don't know why, but I told him about my dream. And I said, it's so weird that I had this dream, and the dream came true right down to the last detail. And he said, let me tell you something about that from my own belief system and perspective. And so he told me that you had that dream because you needed to know. You needed to prepare yourself for that loss. But you also needed to understand that that dream is also preparing you to open up to your abilities, because I told him about how I know things and all that. And he said, this is the beginning of your journey. And to also know that your brother is only left this life, but he is not gone very far away from you. He is always with you. It's like he said, he has walked out of this room and gone into the next room, but you can't see him because of the wall. But he said, but if you talk to him in your mind or with your voice, he can hear you. And I thought about that and I thought, wow. And he said, the flickering of lights, he explained the flickering of lights, that your TV turning off and on. He says that was him trying to communicate with you, to say goodbye to you. And that was the best way he could do it, because that's what he had available to communicate with you. And we had a really good discussion about death, about psychic abilities, about mediumship. And as soon as he was done talking to me, we talked for about an hour or so. I immediately wanted to know more. I wanted to research about this thing that I know and that he explained to me. I want to know more about this. And are there people out there that experience this? And are there a group that I can go and join? So it really aroused my curiosity, and I was excited. And I think that helped me a lot with when I'm dealing with my own children. When I began to notice some of my children saying certain things, I found that I was not alarmed as if it is something that I need to be worried about, to be scared about, but actually to talk about. And tell me, what is it that you are seeing? What is it that you're experiencing? How does it happen? And it's a wonderful discussion.
So Betty, I'm going to just jump in just for a quick second here. It's beautiful that gentleman came to you. It's just the right timing for you to explain. He took all the time to explain that to you so you could understand it and help set you on your path. That's so wonderful. And I just going to add a quick thing in here too, just to let folks know, like, about the lights. And that, when my mother passed away 3.5 months after my son was born, and for about 8 months she was right there with us. All his little baby toys were going off throughout the house, the lights were flickering, things were just happening, radio on and off, just like you said. And so if somebody has had that occurrence happen, that's one of the ways that our loved ones do try to communicate with us after they've crossed over, and they can interfere with electrical items to let you know that they are still here with you, or to say goodbye, or to bring you that closure. And so that is one way to do it. So I love that you brought that point out. But I wanted to ask you to let everybody know, how many children do you have, and how many of them have you noticed has this trait, this ability and the trait that you have of high intuition and mediumship and all of that? So how many children, and how many have the traits?
I have 6 children, and I noticed, the first one that I noticed was one of my sons. Every Sunday when we went to church with my parents, we used to visit the cemetery and visit my brother's grave. And every time we went there with him, he would immediately start saying things like, "Oh, and there he is again. oh, now he's moved over there. Oh, he's smiling. And I remember one time my father said, who's smiling? Who's smiling? And I feel bad now when I think about it that I stopped my father from pursuing that conversation, because now with what I know, I feel that I should have allowed him to answer his grandfather. And I said, oh no, he's just talking. He does that all the time. And my father looked at him and I said, don't worry, don't pay attention. But he always said that. Then one day I took them to a store to buy fruit. There was a new South African store and they were selling fruit and fresh fruit from South Africa. So I took them there and I said, everybody can choose something that they want. And we parked the car across the road from the supermarket. So we crossed the road, went to the middle of the road. There were no cars. It was completely nothing on the street. And my son stopped and said, I know that place. And it was a hotel. And I said, no, you don't. He says, oh, yes, I do. I know that place. I've been there. I've been there many times. I said, you have not. I said, and the reason why I know you have not is because I've never taken you there. And also, I know that we as a family have never been there. I have been there, but you guys have not. He said, Mom, I've been there many times. I said, and what were you doing when you were there? He says, I used to go there and have a drink. I used to go there after work and have a drink. And I said, mm-mm. And we went into the store. We bought what we wanted. When we came out again, he turned again and he said, I know that place. I have been in there. And I said, okay, if you've been in there, what is in there? And he said, in that place, there's a restaurant and it's called the Copper Bowl. And I froze. And I said, let's go to the car. Let's go back to the car. And as I was driving, I thought, I have never mentioned that place. He has never been there. He obviously knows what I know. He knows what I know. And so I was able to have conversation with him. So he is one that I noticed. My youngest one I noticed as well. I have 8 grandchildren, and there are 4 of my grandchildren who I see those abilities. And because they know that they can talk about it with me, they do. They do tell me. I remember one of my oldest grandson once said to me, he said, they were all sitting in here. And I said, did Dad see them? He said, no. I said, so who could see them? He says, I could. So I said, so are they here now? He said, no, they all left as soon as you walked in through the door. I wanted to see if they would still sit here while you were here. But as soon as you walked in through the door, they all walked away. And I knew he knows he's seeing things. And I wanted to know if he felt scared, if he felt that, was there anything that he felt that he was worried about? And he said no. But he said there was one that was teaching him. And that was very interesting because he said this one was teaching him something on the computer. And it was like a game. You're showing him how to do a game on the computer. And years later, when I don't remember which game came out, but when my daughter bought it for him, he said, oh, I know this game already because he showed me. So I said, he showed you this game, but that was like 5 years ago. He says, yeah, that's what he was showing me. He was showing me games of the future, and he showed me this game. Yeah.
So how did you when your grandchildren, your children were sharing these experiences with you, which is beautiful, you knew enough to just listen to them, embrace it. But what did you think? When you're hearing that, that's
Well, yeah. So what I thought was this, that obviously there are children in the family that have that gift, and that I should not interfere with what they're experiencing if it is not hurting them, if it is, if it is safe, if it is something not to worry about. But I have encouraged them to discuss it with me, to talk to me about it. If they feel anything strange or if they're concerned about something. There is one who has never, I knew that he was seeing something and I knew that he was experiencing something, but he would never talk because he would just tell me, I'm not supposed to tell. And I would say, who says you can't tell? He says, well, I'm just not supposed to tell. But I know that he's experiencing it. And I know that he's knowing things because he would just say, oh, that's what's going to happen. So-and-so is going to do that. And so I am happy that they have that gift. And I would love for them to use that gift to help others, but also to help themselves too. And sometimes some knowledge is good knowledge to share with others. And what I would love is to be able to show them how to share something without causing alarm, which is something which a lot of children probably struggle with. Because I know one of my grandchildren, she told me that she found out that her group of friends, they all have a friend. And I was happy that she was sharing that with kids that were going through the same experience, because then she didn't feel that there was something wrong with her, but that it was something normal and natural that she was experiencing.
So she had a friend that had abilities like hers.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's a beautiful thing that makes these children more comfortable, is when they have someone they can relate to that's like them, and so they don't feel different and think it's a weird gift, or that they're weird or so different than everybody else, that they can actually relate. And it's beautiful, some of what you're saying, Betty, that for parents to continue to hear how, when your child brings these things up, is one, is just not to make a big deal of it, but just to listen and be open to what they're saying, and let them express themselves. Because there are a lot of times when people and adults and parents don't understand, they can dismiss it, oh, don't talk about it, or, I don't want to hear that, or that's just an imaginary, you're making it up. But just to stop and listen, because this is so much, having the ability to sense subtle energies is a part of who all of we are. We just can experience it to different degrees. So listening to what our children has to say is so important, because if they do have this ability to a heightened degree, one, they won't get disconnected to it, and two, it helps them to feel, it builds their self-esteem and helps them to feel comfortable in themselves, that they're not different, and then to start trusting those impressions that they're getting, and you can help to validate, and you can help to just listen, hold space, and support them. So that's beautiful what you said, Betty, because that's what parents and grandparents that's
Yes.
one of the best things that they can do for their children, with this type of an ability. So I'm gonna go back to, so you started researching, Betty, and you started trying to find out all that you could. What did you do? Did you end up just taking classes, developing on your own? What helped you to get more comfortable with this and start working with it? And what are you doing with it now, if anything at all?
Okay, I can tell you about that. First of all, I started to look for books, because that's the information that was accessible easily. So I looked for books on the subject, and a lot of times I couldn't get the books that I wanted. But when I traveled, I would, find the books and read the books. Then when I had access to the internet for the first time, I started to Google that, to look it up. And then the next thing was, are there people out there that know a lot about this that are actually teaching you how to use it? And so I didn't have that opportunity until I moved to the US. And when I started to look around, I found, oh my gosh, there is, a lot of information. There is a lot of places that you can go and learn. But my thought was, if I am going to learn it, I need to learn it from the best. I need to learn it from someone who has got a lot of experience. How do I find that person? And when you're looking, you will always find a lot of people that are teaching. And then there is also the question of how much they charge for it. And then also whether it's going to be in person and you have to travel and it's going to cost you money to go there, or you can do it online. Thank goodness to online learning. So right now I am actually taking classes. So that's the first thing I did. In fact, because I wasn't sure where to start, I started with tarot cards. I started to read tarot cards. I did that online. And then at some point I felt like I need to go beyond that. I really want to go beyond this. I want to use my psychic abilities. I want to understand what it is. I want to understand how I can use it. I want to use it. So I did find a teacher in Seattle. And it was in person, and I went to her place, and I had a few lessons with her, and that really, really, really motivated me to look for something deeper. So I have had classes with different teachers. I'm currently doing a mentorship and a couple of mentorships, and so I'm also doing inspirational speaking because I'm very much interested. I'm a book person, but I'm also interested in philosophy. I'm interested to know how other cultures are handling this gift. What are they calling it, and how are they using it? So I have been reading a lot and looking up, other belief systems, or reading books from other belief systems. I have been reading the autobiography of Yogananda Paramahansa. I'm interested in, mystical teachers like Rumi, his poetry. I love that. There's Khalil Gabriel, I love him as well. So I do a lot of research into learning, and I feel that what I've learned is that because I'm now a medium, I bring spirituality into the gift that I have. And I feel that it is important to know that this is coming from the creator. This is coming from the one that created everything that we see, that we know, that we experience, everything that's on this earth. So this is coming from there. And if I am going to use this, if my children are going to use this, if my grandchildren are going to use this, they should know that it is a sacred thing. It is a blessed thing. And it's not something to be ashamed of. And it's not something to fear. And
that's beautiful, Betty, because that's a key message with all this on why we're trying to normalize the conversations around this, because it is a blessed gift that is to be shared. It is something that it transcends, to me, all belief systems. It does come from a spiritual place of spirituality. And I think, like what you're saying, what you're doing is a message that, wanting to get out to folks as well, because in order to help our children, we have to help ourselves. And that was one of the big messages I got from my son and I've shared this story a couple of times about when I was struggling I was using my gift, but quietly. I was doing readings for people, doing it behind the scenes. But one day my son, when I was trying to get him to embrace himself, and he came home and he was dealing with some things with kids at school talking about him and his abilities. And he said, Mom, I can't be me until you be you. Stop hiding. And that right there changed things for me. And it was like, I have to own this. I have to really own it and be proud about it and be out there and purposeful and be out there with it, because I have to model for him
Yes.
what it is to embrace and accept yourself, which this is a part of who we are, and show our kids that. And so that's beautiful that you went and you've gotten a training for it and you openly discuss it with your children and your grandchildren so that they can feel more comfortable in who they are, accepting of it, and be able to embrace this in a different way than what we did coming up when we didn't feel that we can do that. So I think that's beautiful of people looking and researching. If you're struggling with your belief system, do the research and look at things from a bigger perspective and how this all fits in there. And just working on ourselves as adults is definitely going to help the kids. I wanted to, just because we'll start wrapping this up, I wanted to ask you, Betty, what, oh, and I do want to say too, before I just, when you were talking about books, and Tara, I'm a books person too. And so that's so helpful. And I just want to just make a little caveat here to let people know, you know, that's why our Highly Intuitive Kids website is so important. There's books and resources out there. We're going to be continually adding more to it. But that website is a resource, a one-stop shopping place that you can go there to get you started. And that's something that I know I didn't have, Betty, and like there wasn't anything that I'm aware of that was like that, where you could go somewhere and get access to resources. And so we have things for books, we have tarots for kids, all these things that are out there, so people can go check that out. But Betty, what, as we're wrapping this up, what couple pieces of advice would you give to parents who are, you know, even there are parents who are new to this, trying to figure out, how do I help my child? And I think through your story, people have heard some great tips on being supportive and listening, but what other pieces of advice would you want to leave parents with on how they could help support their highly intuitive child?
Well, I would say that the first thing, of course, is to listen. And when you listen to the information that that child is giving you. Sometimes you will be surprised that it is a knowledge that you can actually Google and just find out. One example is my granddaughter asked me, as she was 5 years old, she said to me, Grandma, can I use your phone? And I said, who do you want to call? I said, oh, I want to call my friend Grace. I said, and where does Grace live? She says, in California. And I said, in California, do you know her number? She says, oh, yes, I do. I said, okay, and what do you want to tell her? And she said, well, I just want to check on her because there's a fire there. And I said, so where exactly in California? So she said, Egypt, California. Of course, my first response was, to giggle that, Egypt, California. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. Egypt, California? So she says, yeah, Egypt, California. Well, I did Google it after our conversation, and there was a Egypt, California. She's only 5 years old, and I don't think she would have heard it anywhere. So Egypt, California is a place in California where Hollywood had built this city so that they could film Ben-Hur. And so they used it for the filming of the movie, and then it was just abandoned. So it's just a setting that is just there. But that was interesting that it came from her. But I would say is listen to the information that they're giving you, and try to reassure them that it's okay. If the information they're giving you is something that you're concerned about because there is fear or they are scared of something, then you need to understand what is it that they're afraid of. If it is a fear of they're hearing something or there's a voice or something terrifying, yes, pay attention to that too, and see what you can do to help them understand where the voices come from. Is it a health issue, a medical issue, or is it just something that they're afraid of? And I feel that the more you listen, the more you can make an informed choice and not panic. And I know that many times your religious beliefs will kick in as soon as you start hear anything that is unusual, and you start to think maybe my child is not normal, maybe my child is possessed, and that's a lot of some parents think like that. But I would just say listen. I think listening is you can get a lot of information. Once you start to show panic yourself, then the child will withhold what they could tell you. But the more you relax and listen to more and more of what they want to share, you will be able to make an informed choice. Do some research like I did, read up about it. Try and see who in your area is knowledgeable about the subject. The website of highly intuitive kids, that is one place to go. And and sometimes you'll find that there are other parents who are also going through the same thing, and they might be able to share their experiences and how they've handled them as well. Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Betty. And just to piggyback off of some of the things you said, like what you were mentioning, when kids say this and when they say it with such, conviction behind it, or in such details, and if you can search it and validate it, that's beautiful, because then it lets you know that it lets the child know that their impressions they're receiving are real. It lets the parent know that, and then you know what you're working with. But like what you said, if a child is hearing voices, or they're scared or fearful or feeling stressed, we always advocate that, you always want to rule out any mental health issue first. So always keep in mind that you should take your child, if you have any concerns that they're acting out of their normal behavior, and then talking about this, take them and have them checked, talk to their doctors. But also, just rule that out as an issue. And then if it's not, and it's just fear from their heightened abilities with being, intuitive, empathic, or mediumistic, then you want to reach out where you can get support if you're not knowledgeable in that. One, educate yourself, the Highly Intuitive Kids website, our parent group that we have. Join the parent group. We have everyone in the parent group is having some experience with their child. So you have a support resource there. And you can always reach out to us through highlyintuitivekids@gmail.com. You can join the group, and you can also send an email, and we'll work with you and your family to help connect you with someone, myself or someone else in the group, to work with your family. But Betty, this is all good information that you've shared, and you've brought another perspective to our group, with you being from Kenya, and you said Malawi, you had experience in those areas. Just one real quick question. In those countries, how do they look at having these types of abilities?
So from my personal experience, I can't speak about a lot about the cultures, but what I can tell you is most people in Africa are either Christian or Islamic, or they belong to some religion. But there are a lot of other people who believe in ancestral spirits. And those that come from those kind of cultures, like when I lived in Zimbabwe, I was able to know about that, because there were tribes there that believe in ancestral spirits, going to offer sacrifices, thanking the spirits for a good harvest, asking the spirits to intercede because there's no rain, or there's a famine or something like that. And also people used to do, I remember in Zimbabwe, and I lived there. My neighbor had bought a brand new car, and he said, before I go anywhere, I have to take it back to my village and go to the hill and thank the ancestors and ask them to bless this car so that, nothing untoward happens to me. So, that's how deep it is. And this is someone who still goes to church, but they still have that strong belief in that. And I know that in some parts of Malawi, there are people who still believe in the ancestors. So there's a lot of Africans that believe in ancestral, but I think that the being a Christian is put more in the forefront than ancestral, unless it is something that is part of your tribe, and that's what, then yeah. So for me, I was not able to share this with a lot of the family. But I knew there were certain members of the family that I could, because I knew that they had it. So yeah, so that's what I know about that.
Well, that's great. And I just want to give people full perspective, because as we're talking to people from different countries and different cultures, just giving them perspective on once again, just that this is everyone everywhere. And just what you said, Betty, been saying, high intuition runs in family lines, and you'll see it through family, within several family members, parent, child, it exists somewhere in the family line. And so I appreciate you just giving this whole perspective, the tips that you offered to the parents, sharing your story, because there are going to be people that will be able to relate to what you said.
Yes.
In different points in your story. And that's the whole point of this, is that we're not also, different, that we're all experiencing some aspect of this. Our children are more intuitive than ever. They're coming in so much more connected now, that we have to have these conversations so we can start opening our minds and hearts, and opening people's minds and hearts to, just embrace this as more of it's just a trait. It's something that we have, that we need to talk about and normalize, so that our kids don't feel so different, and those adults who have gotten disconnected from it are willing to reconnect, because then we bring our whole selves to our lives, and all of who we are meant to be, and embrace what we're meant to share with the world, because this is just truly a different part of us, a different set of abilities and gifts that are meant to be shared with the world. So I truly appreciate you, Betty, for bringing your whole perspective in this conversation.
Thank you.
To our group and to the community, and for people who are going to benefit from what you had to say today. So thank you so very much, Betty.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we look forward to sharing another story next month with everyone, with someone from another area, to give you a whole different perspective on just, how far and wide all of this is, and how common it is, and how much we just need to embrace it and talk about it, so we can continue to help our children.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here. And it's been a beautiful discussion. Thank you so much, Ellen.
Yeah, thank you, Betty.